What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. So what I wanted to do today is talk to you guys about my 1-year ownership of owning my BMW 535 F10. I thought it'd be a cool idea to kind of go over this last year with you guys and talk about a couple of the things that I've done and just give you guys kind of a baseline idea for what owning this car has been like, at least in my experience. Now, obviously, everybody's experience is a little bit different. Some people might have, catastrophic failures while they owned their car, and some people might just cruise by and only ever need to do oil changes and tire rotations. But yeah, I thought it'd be a cool idea to kind of walk you through at least my experience, tell you some of the things that I've had to deal with since owning the car, and yeah, just go over how it's been to drive one of these cars and kind of give you an idea of maybe what to expect if you're looking to pick one up or if you're a new owner of this platform. So let's get into it. So, like I said, I've owned this car for just over a year now. I actually picked it up in mid-June of last year. And it's kind of funny, I actually wasn't even planning to pick this car up. To be completely honest with you guys, right before buying this car, about 2 weeks before, I had sold my E90 M3 because I was kind of planning to focus a little more on my career and just kind of save up for a house. And I don't know, man, just being a car enthusiast, it's hard to get away from the classifieds, and you end up kind of finding something that checks off enough boxes, and this car did that for me. And it's also kind of funny because, I started this YouTube channel with this car. I'm sure a lot of you guys have found my channel through looking up F10 content, and it's just kind of funny to think about where I'd be without having this car. But anyways, yeah, so I've owned this car for just over a year now. There's been a few problems, but I'm thankful and happy that I haven't had to deal with anything extreme so far in this car. Most notably is this car's had an oil pan leak for pretty much the entire time I've owned it, and I've had the parts. It's probably the first parts I ever picked up for the car, but unfortunately, being where I'm at, it's hard to tackle a job that big without getting the car on a lift. And unfortunately, just the way things are at my work, I have a hard time finding time to do that, but it's on the to-do list. Like I said, that's probably the more bigger issue I've had with the car, and I'd hardly call it an issue just because it's not like I deal with it day to day. It's not like I even really see oil drips on the ground from this car, so that's kind of a minor one on the scale of things that could possibly happen with these cars. Another thing that has happened since I've owned the car is it actually happened when I took the car out for some canyon runs after I installed the coilovers. I've had intermittently the TPMS warning light come on. I don't know which one it is, but they were working, and they work most of the time, but sometimes I have a feeling one of the batteries and the sensors is going out, and I just haven't bothered to try to figure out which one it is and figure out what it would cost to take care of, because it doesn't affect my driving, and the only thing is it just has an annoying little indicator on the dash, so not a super huge deal. Another, I guess we can call it an issue that I've experienced with this car, and if you have an F10, you probably know about this problem. I know several people on Facebook and on the forums and stuff who have talked about this problem, and unfortunately my car is plagued with it as well, but it's the vibration at freeway speed. Now, I've done a lot of research, and I've seen people pretty much talk about replacing every single component you possibly can in regards to the suspension. And since replacing my suspension and installing the coilovers, it helped a little bit. Maybe I just haven't done enough research to know what one single part is causing the issue, but from my understanding, the car has a clean history. I don't think it's been in any accidents, and the car is otherwise healthy. It does have 130,000-ish miles on it, and so I'm not sure how much of the components prior to my ownership came with the car from factory versus what has been replaced and what hasn't been replaced. So unfortunately, my car does vibrate a little bit. It's kind of weird. It doesn't do it as prevalent as often as you'd think. It's not every single time I drive the car. Sometimes I notice it more than other times. Sometimes it's way more prevalent than other times, as in maybe it's a little more vibraty than other times. But yeah, man, I've had that issue. If you aren't familiar or you are looking to pick up an F10, just know that that's an issue on these cars. Again, maybe it's just my lack of research, but I don't know if BMW ever addressed them. I don't know if on the newer F10s, if that problem went away. My car is a 2011, which for the States is the first year that they came out. So just be aware of that. I have that problem. You're likely going to have that problem. So just be careful, be mindful, and replace parts as necessary. Another problem I've been having with the car is I keep getting a low oil indicator light on my iDrive screen. Again, obviously I have an oil leak. I have yet to do a huge maintenance service to the car. So I don't know if the oil level unit is actually going out. Sometimes it'll be on, sometimes it won't be on. That's kind of why I bring it up. Obviously you'd say just put oil in it, which I have done, but it still comes on sometimes. So I'm not sure if I have a faulty leveling sensor or not, but it's one problem I've had to deal with. Again, just an annoying little indicator on my iDrive screen. This is probably the last of the major issues that I can at least think of off the top of my head right now, but from picking the car up, one of my rear parking sensors has been out, and it's kind of funky because it'll give me the notification on my iDrive screen, but then all I have to do is click the little button, and then I have my reverse camera. But when I get close to things, it doesn't beep or anything. And I've tried to turn it off, the little setting off, and it's still, every single time I put my car in reverse, it pops up saying I have a malfunction, I have a bad sensor. I haven't pinpointed which sensor it is, but again, my car is 12, 13 years old at this point, and so I wouldn't be surprised if either one is damaged or one has just failed. But it is a problem I've had to deal with since picking up the car. But again, as far as problems that can happen on these cars, especially considering the fact that if you're unfamiliar, when these cars were new, they were $50,000, $60,000, $65,000. They're expensive cars, and now you can pick them up for pretty cheap, but that doesn't mean that the parts are necessarily cheap. And diagnosing these cars are also not very cheap if you're not very DIY. So yeah, I just haven't bothered to deal with it. It doesn't bug me. I don't drive this car very often. It's a project car, and I have a daily, so it kind of sits for a lot of the time. So it's not a big deal. I have the reverse camera, so anytime I need to back up, it's been perfectly fine for me. So yeah, man, that's probably the bulk of my problems. Again, I'm super lucky that I haven't had any catastrophic, failures on the car, knock on wood, of course. But overall, man, the ownership experience is from a maintenance standpoint has been really nice. I haven't had to do a whole lot, and the car has been really, really nice to drive. It feels really good. It feels healthy, and I don't ever feel at any moment in time that the car's just ready to go. So it's been an awesome experience so far, in from a maintenance perspective at least. All right, so stepping away from the maintenance, I want to talk about the aesthetics of the car, the performance of the car, and then just kind of generally my opinion and whether or not I think you should even bother wasting your time with one. But talking about the aesthetics, I think these cars have aged extremely well considering how cars are being manufactured nowadays. I think everything is just kind of morphing into one similar blob of another car. I think everything is kind of looking pretty similar. All the headlight designs are kind of similar, and the tail light, the long tail lights and stuff, a lot of companies are using them, and I think just a lot of manufacturers are just taking a lot of the ideas from other manufacturers. And not to say that back in 2011 when this car came to the States that BMW wasn't doing that with another car, but I think this car specifically, the F10 specifically, looks extremely good. I think it's aged really, really well, and I think with just a couple of mods, if you don't already have an M Sport or an M5, if you just have a base model car like mine was, with just a couple of mods, the car can look 10 times better than it did before, which again, compared to cars out on the road now, I mean, makes it look even better than it did before. So for a car that's going on 12, 13 years old now, for the older models, I think it's crazy that these cars still kind of hold up the way they do compared to just what's out right now. So yeah, man. Moving on to the performance aspect of this car. Now mine is a 535, which means it has an N55 motor. It's only putting out 300 plus horsepower, and the car is a boat. It weighs over 4,000 pounds. So obviously I'm not ripping through the streets. I'm not breaking any records on any tracks, but even still, the car still surprises me. The car still feels really peppy, and I'm not sure if it's just the fact that my car is a 6-speed. I'm not even sure if you guys know that these cars come in 6-speed, but I was fortunate enough to find one. BMW did make 6-speed options in these F10s, and again, maybe that's why my car feels a little more peppy than if I had picked up an automatic with like paddle shifters and stuff. But to me, the car feels really good, and I can only imagine what like a 550 feels like, which is the V8 twin turbo or the M5 even. And just to think that my car feels good to me, and I don't even have one of those, I can only imagine what those cars feels like. And to know that this platform has all 3 options, and all of which are very capable in their own regard, it's awesome to see. It's awesome. It's an awesome thing about this platform. Another thing to note is that, forgive me if this is just a thing with turbocharged cars. This F10 was my first turbo car I've ever owned, so I'm still kind of, learning all of the turbo community things. But this car, or rather this platform, is insanely tunable. And because there's so many people out there with these cars, and because there's so many companies who make parts for these cars, you could make these cars insanely capable if you wanted to. There's an ungodly amount of aftermarket support for this chassis, and with not even that much money, with just like some simple bolt-ons like an intercooler upgrade, maybe an exhaust and a tune, you can get a lot of power out of these cars. And so it's cool to know that a car from that far back is still being supported today, and there's a lot you can get out of it with just a little put in, if that makes sense. Now I want to talk about just in general what I think about the F10 overall, and whether or not I think you should consider picking one up or keeping yours if you already have one. But if I can go back, would I change it? Would I have not bought the car? I don't think so, man. I think this is a really, really rad car. I think if you have the opportunity to pick one up, I think you should. They're really fun. They are honestly good for pretty much every driving situation, maybe minus like aggressive track driving, and you can make them that way. Obviously, you throw enough money at anything, you can make it capable for whatever you want it for. But I think if you're going to go that route, maybe consider picking up an M5. It already kind of has all that stuff built into it, and they're more like tuned for track use. But in other driving situations, I think the F10 could be a perfect daily driver. I think the F10 could be a perfect little canyon car. I think the F10 could be perfect for if you're trying to rip through drag strips, to be honest. But it's good for all of the things, I think. And combine that with the fact that it looks good doing it, I don't think you can go wrong picking up an F10. I haven't looked super recently, but I picked mine up a year ago for a pretty good deal. I got mine for less than $10,000, clean title, and it had some miles on it, but considering how old it is now, it's pretty average with just daily driving. So I can't complain. I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you could find a pretty good deal on one still. And kind of like I just mentioned, there's just so much support for these cars still that you could pick up a lot of used parts for relatively cheap. You could pick up used aftermarket parts for relatively cheap. And I think, again, if you get the opportunity, you should pick one up, because I mean, it's a good all-around car, man. I have no complaints, maybe other than the fact that I just don't get out enough and drive it. But I'm trying. I've been, kind of little side tangent, I have been working on it. I have some stuff coming up, and I'm trying to finish, no pun intended, but wrapping up this stage of the car and, showing it to you guys. But yeah, man, I'm a big fan of the F10. I was a big fan of the F10 before I even picked it up. That's why I was always looking. And I think if you're considering, or if you are a new owner, you should enjoy your ownership or consider picking one up so you can enjoy the ownership of these cars, because they're awesome cars. I have nothing bad to say about them. And again, maybe it's just my fortunate luck of not having anything catastrophic happen, but I can't complain. I'm happy to, get out and put some more miles on the car before I consider getting rid of it. But yeah, man, obviously this situation was tailored to me. I can't promise that your ownership experience will be similar to my ownership experience, but I wanted to give you a little rundown, maybe at the very least make you feel good about considering picking one up if you are considering picking one up, because I know videos like this always helped me when I was looking for cars, just knowing that other people had good experiences with the car I was looking at. One thing to note, I do want to say that if you are picking up one of these cars, don't forget that when they came out, they were like $50, $60, $70,000 cars. And so even though you could pick them up for cheap nowadays, you know, diagnosing problems on these cars are still expensive. Parts for these cars could still be expensive. And so if you're gonna pick one up and you're not like an avid DIYer, I highly suggest just setting aside a little bit of money every couple months and getting the car checked out and making sure it's, you know, in tip-top shape, because it would suck to kind of have something catastrophic happen because you got a good deal on the car, but then you can't afford to maintain it. You know, that's not a cool way to own a car. So anyways, I hope that if you watch this video, again, it made you feel good about if you're considering picking one up or if you just picked one up. And yeah, man, I hope your ownership experience is similar to my ownership experience, in the sense that you don't have a lot of problems, you have a ton of fun, and hopefully you can mod it in a way that you love and you just enjoy the car for a long time to come. But I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.